May 7, 2008, room 1508 of the National Hotel in Miami Beach. It's 6 in the morning when Albert Gonzalez wakes to the sound of doors being broken down. Before he can process what's happening, federal agents burst into the luxury room. He's alone. There's no time to react, nowhere to run. Agents find 2 laptops, a Glock compact pistol, and $25,000 in cash scattered around the room. Albert is placed face down on the floor, his hands handcuffed behind his back. The man who for years considered himself untouchable now has his face pressed against the carpet of a 5-star hotel. In the following hours, other teams searched his parents' modest home in a middle-class neighborhood in Miami. In the backyard, under a tree the family planted when Albert was a child, agents began to dig. About a meter deep, they found a sealed plastic drum. Inside, more than $1.1 million in $20 bills, wrapped in plastic bags to protect them from moisture. The 27-year-old man who was just arrested doesn't look like a criminal mastermind. Thin, pale, with thin-rimmed glasses and deep dark circles under his eyes from spending nights in front of a computer. He could be any IT employee from any American company, the kind of person you wouldn't give a second glance if you saw him on the street. But Albert Gonzalez is no ordinary person. He is responsible for stealing more than 170 million credit and debit card numbers, the largest identity fraud ever prosecuted by the American government. A crime so large that the potential losses exceed $21 billion. And here's the part that turned this case into legend. During the 3 years in which he committed his most serious crimes, Albert was an employee of the United States Secret Service, a paid informant with a salary of $75,000 a year. He gave lectures at federal conferences and even shook hands with the director of the Secret Service himself. A 14-year-old boy sits in his bedroom at his family's house in South Miami. It's late at night. The rest of the house is silent, but the computer he bought at age 12 with money from odd jobs glows. Albert Gonzalez isn't popular at school. He doesn't play sports. He doesn't go to parties. His teachers describe him as the troubled leader of a small group of computer nerds. But in the digital world, in the chat rooms he frequents every night, he's becoming a legend. On that particular night, Albert does something that will change his life forever. Driven only by curiosity and the desire to prove he can, he hacks into NASA's systems, the American Space Agency, the same organization that put men on the moon. There's no grand plan or financial objective. He simply wants to see if he can get into a place he shouldn't. And he succeeds. A few days later, FBI agents show up at South Miami High School. Albert is taken from the classroom under the curious gaze of his classmates and interrogated. He is only 14 years old and cannot be arrested as an adult. He receives only a stern warning and the promise that next time the consequences will be different. Any normal person would have learned their lesson. They would have been scared enough never to touch a computer again with malicious intent. Albert learns something completely different. He can do things that trained adults, with resources from the federal government, can't stop. And that feeling is more addictive than any drug. In the following years, Albert abandons any pretense of being a normal student. His grades plummet as he spends his nights in chat rooms, learning increasingly sophisticated techniques from hackers around the world. He creates his first online nickname, Soup Nazi, inspired by the grumpy character from the sitcom Seinfeld. In 2000, at age 19, he drops out of Miami Community College after only 1 semester. The academic world is too slow, too boring. He moves to New York, then to Kearney, New Jersey. It is there that he finds his true home, the Shadow Crew. Imagine Amazon, but for criminals. A website where you can buy stolen credit card numbers, fake IDs, social security numbers, fraudulent passports, and detailed tutorials on how to commit all kinds of fraud. Everything is organized into categories, with seller ratings, a reputation system, and even customer support. If you bought a batch of cards and they didn't work, you could file a complaint and get a refund. It was organized crime with Silicon Valley efficiency. Using the alias Kumbajani, Albert quickly climbs the ranks to become the main administrator. The forum has over 4,000 registered members from dozens of countries. Transactions involve millions of dollars, and Albert is at the center of it all, helping to manage operations and resolve disputes between members. But in 2003, his luck seemingly runs out. He's in New York, standing in front of an ATM, withdrawing money with cloned cards. It's a routine operation he's done dozens of times. But this time, an undercover NYPD detective notices something strange. The skinny young man is using multiple different cards, one after the other. The detective approaches. Minutes later, Albert is handcuffed. When they examine the laptop he's carrying, they find something shocking. It's not hundreds of stolen cards, it's not thousands. It's millions. Millions of credit and debit card numbers from people all over the country. The news travels fast. It reaches the Secret Service, which had already been investigating the Shadow Crew for months without being able to identify its leaders. And here the story takes an unexpected turn. The Secret Service recognizes something about that nervous young man. He's no ordinary criminal. He's one of the ringleaders of the biggest fraud operation they've ever seen, and he has information worth more than a conviction. Albert is 22 years old and terrified. A federal agent speaks plainly. He could spend 20 years in prison or help the government. I was 22 years old and scared. He would later tell the New York Times. You do anything. He accepts the deal. In October 2004, Operation Firewall was executed. Albert had convinced the Shadow Crew leaders to use a VPN that he himself had set up, promising total anonymity. The VPN was a trap. Every message was being monitored by the Secret Service. On the night of the operation, agents in 6 countries simultaneously arrested the key members. 19 people were indicted. The website was taken down. It was the largest arrest of cyber criminals in American history. Of all the leaders, only Albert was not arrested. His former colleagues are quick to settle the score. The Secret Service recommends that Albert move to Miami for his safety. But instead of starting an honest life, Albert sees the move as a golden opportunity. He has just learned exactly how the government investigates cyber crimes. He knows the techniques, the tools, the limitations. In 2006, he became a paid informant for the Miami office. He continued to assist in investigations, giving lectures on cybersecurity. An agent would later say, he knew the good he could have done with his talent. For me, it was very difficult. But all the while, Albert has been living a double life. By day, he hunts hackers for the government. By night, he plans the biggest data heists in history. Imagine you're in the parking lot of a large store, a TJ Maxx, a Marshalls, any retail chain. You look around and see only cars, families shopping, nothing special. But if you had a laptop with the right software and a powerful antenna, you would see something completely different. You would see invisible waves of data flowing through the air. Credit card information, employee passwords, transaction details, all transmitted over wireless networks that companies believed to be secure. This technique is called war driving around looking for vulnerable networks, and Albert Gonzalez turned it into a financial weapon of mass destruction. In late 2004, shortly after moving back to Miami, Albert began researching vulnerabilities in corporate retail networks. What he discovered was frightening. Large American retailers, companies with billions of dollars in revenue, were using a security protocol called WEP to protect their wireless networks. The problem was that WEP was notoriously weak. Security researchers had known since 2001 that it could be broken in minutes with the right tools. But companies continued to use it because updating their systems would cost money. It was cheaper to ignore the problem. For Albert, this was like discovering that the country's biggest banks were leaving their vaults open overnight. He assembles a small team of trusted associates. Christopher Scott, a friend from his chat room days, drives while Albert operates the equipment from the passenger seat. They travel along US Route 1 in Miami, stopping at the parking lots of major retailers and testing their networks one by one. In July 2005, they found the perfect target: a Marshall store in Minnesota with an outdated WEP wireless network. They parked on the lot, broke the encryption in minutes, and gained access to the store's internal network. But Albert doesn't just want the data from that specific store. That would be thinking small. He wants everything. Once inside the local network, the team begins to explore. And what they find is a corporate security nightmare. The systems of the individual stores are connected to the central servers of TJX companies in Massachusetts. Network segmentation is practically non-existent. Internal protections are a joke. Over the course of 18 months, from July 2005 to December 2006, Albert's team quietly extracted data from TJX. They installed programs called sniffers that captured card information in real time, while unsuspecting customers made their purchases, unaware that every transaction was being copied. The total: 45.6 million credit and debit card numbers. The largest credit card data breach in history at the time. But Albert needs custom software to operate at that scale, and for that, he turns to an old friend. Stephen Watt doesn't look like a criminal. Standing over 2 meters tall, he's a bodybuilder who graduated high school at 16 and works at Morgan Stanley, earning $130,000 a year. Albert and Stephen met in chat rooms and developed an unlikely friendship. They share one fundamental belief: they both think the rules don't apply to people as intelligent as they are. When Albert asks for help, Stephen doesn't hesitate. He has everything to lose, but his loyalty to his friend speaks louder. In about 10 hours, he creates the program, which he names Blah Blah, a joke about how ridiculously easy it was. The software is elegant in its deadly simplicity. It monitors network traffic, captures card data, automatically encrypts it, and sends it to servers controlled by Albert, all without leaving a trace. With Blah Blah installed, the operation becomes industrial. The volume is so massive that Albert needs servers in Latvia, the Netherlands, and Ukraine to store everything. And throughout all this time, he continues to show up at the Secret Service office and receive his salary. But Albert is still not satisfied. TJX was just the warm-up. Heartland Payment Systems isn't a store you visit. It's a company most people have never heard of. But it's likely processed your payments dozens of times, without you even knowing. They're one of the largest credit card processors in the United States. 100 million transactions pass through their systems every month. For Albert, this represents one thing: virtually infinite volume. In late 2007, his team began probing Heartland using a different technique: SQL injection, a classic vulnerability in web pages that allows attackers to send commands directly to companies' databases. Albert's team finds an old login page in Heartland's systems, a page that had existed for 8 years and had never been updated or audited, a page vulnerable to basic SQL injection. They exploit this flaw and gain initial access to the network. Then, they spend months moving laterally through the systems, avoiding detection, mapping the infrastructure, installing sniffers. Heartland only discovered it had been hacked when Visa and MasterCard contacted them in October 2008, almost a year after the attack began, inquiring about suspicious transactions. 130 million credit and debit card numbers were stolen. It's the biggest card data breach in American history. Losses for Heartland exceed $200 million. The company's stock price plummeted 77% in a matter of weeks. But Albert doesn't make the amateur mistake of trying to use these cards personally. That would be suicide. Instead, he does what every professional criminal does. He sells them wholesale. His main buyer is a man in Ukraine named Maxim Yastremsky, known in the underworld as Maxik, the biggest seller of stolen credit cards in all of Europe. Throughout their partnership, Albert and Maxik exchanged over 600 encrypted messages. Albert sent the stolen data. Maxick turned it into money, selling it to other criminals or manufacturing counterfeit physical cards. Albert received approximately $400,000. And Maxick made much more by reselling it to his network of clients in Europe and Asia. Meanwhile, Albert's lifestyle begins to change. He buys an apartment in Miami. He drives a blue BMW 330i. He wears Rolex watches. He throws himself a $75,000 birthday party. On one occasion, he complains to associates that his money-counting machine broke down and he had to count $340,000 in $20 bills manually. A lifestyle completely incompatible with a salary of $75,000 a year. But apparently, nobody in the Secret Service notices, or nobody wants to notice, until a trip to Dubai changes everything. In early 2007, a Secret Service agent travels to Dubai. His mission: to personally meet Maxick, posing as a buyer interested in larger quantities of cards. During the meeting at a luxury hotel, the agent finds an opportunity to secretly copy the hard drive from Maxick's laptop. This disk contains absolutely everything: millions of stolen cards, complete logs of encrypted conversations with all of Maxick's suppliers. In July 2007, Maxick was arrested in Turkey. Among the seized material, they found a folder containing Albert's photo, his complete credit report, and his sister's address. Maxick kept it as a safekeeping item. In the United States, analysts spend months scouring the disk copied in Dubai. One supplier draws particular attention. It identifies itself only by a number, 2016's 996. The messages contain revealing details. 2096 mentions having modified software for use on TJX. He coordinates attacks against other networks. Finally, in December 2007, they managed to link the number to a specific email address. A veteran agent is called in to verify the discovery. She enters the room where colleagues are gathered in silence. 10 agents are looking at her with expressions she can't decipher. They show the email on the screen. She looks. She doesn't understand. She looks again. 3 minutes of absolute silence. Then he murmurs, "Oh my God." The email belongs to Albert Gonzalez, their informant, the man they trained, paid, and trusted for 4 years. The same man who shook hands with the director of the Secret Service. He was the greatest hacker they had been looking for all along. The discovery puts the Secret Service in an impossible position. Their most successful informant is the most prolific cyber criminal in American history. The investigation is proceeding in absolute secrecy. They can't let Albert find out. If he suspects anything and decides to run away, he could disappear forever. In May 2008, the opportunity arises. Albert needs to return to Dave & Buster's to reinstall capture software, a mistake that reveals a predictable pattern. May 7, 2008. Agents track Albert to the National Hotel in Miami Beach. On the seized laptops, they found evidence that left them in shock. The scale is much larger than they imagined. Dozens of victim companies, an entire network of distributors and accomplices in at least 6 countries. Investigators estimate that Albert and his network stole enough data to cause potential losses of more than $21 billion. Albert's lawyers are trying every strategy. They argue that he suffers from Asperger's syndrome. They attempt the public authority defense. The lines between his activities as an informant and his criminal activities have become blurred. No strategy works. In August 2009, Albert pleaded guilty to all charges. These included 19 federal crimes in the TJX case, plus crimes related to Heartland and dozens of other victims. The sentencing takes place in March 2010 in Boston. The room is full of Secret Service agents, some of whom worked directly with him for years. Albert doesn't look back once. When given the opportunity to speak, "I blame no one but myself. I am guilty not only of exploiting computer networks, but of exploiting personal relationships, particularly one I had with a certain government agency that believed in me. This agency not only believed in me, but gave me a second chance at life. and I threw it all away. The judge sentenced him to 20 years in federal prison, the longest sentence ever handed down for a cybercrime in United States history. Stephen Watt receives a 2-year sentence. Christopher Scott, 7. Maxik has already served 30 years in Turkey. Albert Gonzalez was released in 2023 after serving approximately 13 years. He was 42 years old. The digital world he encountered was radically different. TJX invested hundreds of millions in security. Heartland developed end-to-end encryption technology that became an industry standard. Many of the protections that exist on their cards today are directly due to what Albert did. During the height of his criminal career, Albert stole data from somewhere between 20 and 50% of all American adults. And he did it using techniques that seem almost primitive today. Albert Gonzalez proved something that many people preferred not to believe: that a single person with sufficient technical knowledge and a lack of scruples can cause financial damage on the scale of a military attack. That the people who should protect us are sometimes incapable of seeing the danger right in front of them. In the end, it wasn't a sophisticated technical error that brought Albert down. It was trusting the wrong people. It was Maxik in Ukraine with his laptop full of evidence. It was $75,000 parties when his official salary was exactly that for the entire year. Albert Gonzalez was truly a computer genius. But in the end, he was human. And humans always make mistakes. The difference is that his mistakes cost billions of dollars and permanently changed how the entire world thinks about digital security. And somewhere, right now, someone is trying to do the same thing. The only question is whether we'll catch them before it's too late.